Hello.
Welcome back to the Space Gulag, otherwise known as PPSW, your favorite hangout place, and today we're back with another Star Wars story. Revan is one of the most renowned members of both the Jedi and the Sith. What would have happened if he had trained the Chosen One, meant to bring balance to the Force? Before we begin this video, special thanks to our patrons, voice actors, and everyone else part of the Pente Control team. If you want a chance to win our next giveaway, which is a lightsaber, watch to the end of the video and I will tell you all about it. Our story begins in the year of 3638 BBY. The Jedi by the name of Revan passed away. He was respected by both the Jedi and the Sith. A tomb was constructed for him on the Sith homeworld of Korriban, while the Jedi buried their fallen member on Tython. A year later, the Sith would launch an invasion against the Jedi Temple on Tython, killing every living member of the temple, leaving it in shambles. Though the Jedi Temple on Tython was left to ruin, the burial grounds beneath the temple were untouched. Over the course of generations, hundreds of years would turn to thousands of years. After the age of the Old Republic and the High Republic, the Galactic Republic stood as a foothold of power in the galaxy. 6 years earlier, there was a challenge to what they had, when the Trade Federation blockaded the peaceful world of Naboo. During this invasion of Naboo, the Sith appeared for the first time in over a millennia. To the Jedi, it was of great concern, because Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn was killed during a skirmish between the Sith assassin, known as Maul, and him and his apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The duel was ended when Maul was cut into half by Obi-Wan, as his master died in his arms. Qui-Gon requested one thing of Obi-Wan before he passed into the Force. He requested that Obi-Wan train the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker. Obi-Wan promised his master that he would. 6 years after the death of Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and Anakin were out and about on missions all across the galaxy. They had a rough bond, though. They butted heads very often, and Anakin was overly cocky. His ego was enlarged, and he was more than confident in himself. Rather than his confidence being a positive trait, it was more of an overzealous development of a toxic behavior that was, in a way, enabled by his master. Obi-Wan, of course, was hard on Anakin, but it made Anakin compete with his master. Anakin knew he was more powerful, but he didn't have the patience to beat Obi-Wan. There were times during their sparring where Anakin had the upper hand, but it was very easy for Anakin to get cocky and throw away any advantage he had. Obi-Wan tried so hard to get Anakin to release himself from his eagerness to achieve victory. Sometimes it felt like Anakin only wanted to win. It wasn't necessarily his fault. He was a slave from Tatooine, but it inhibited him as a Jedi. Anakin tried to impress Obi-Wan, and while it came off a lot that Anakin was resentful towards his master, the truth was that Anakin just wanted to please him. In some ways, he felt incredibly fortunate to be taught by Kenobi. Obi-Wan was as wise as Master Yoda, and as powerful as Master Windu. But Anakin also felt that Obi-Wan was holding him back to an extent, something Anakin knew that Qui-Gon wouldn't do. Regardless, Master and Apprentice were being sent to a deep core world. There were some tribes of the natives of the planet that needed to be quelled. They were fighting with one another, and they weren't stopped, the civilization would meet extinction. Not like it was the first time it happened to a civilization on Tython. These same people were once a proud civilization, but they were set back millions of years when the Sith came in and wiped everyone off the world. The few survivors carried the legacy of the past, and taught it down generation to generation. Though at some point, the people split off from one another, and they began to see the ancient mythos of the Sith destroying their people as the opposing tribe having done it. Some sort of warring between two brothers that wanted to rule the entirety of the people. Because these tribes were stuck at war, they never got back at the chance to rise up to their former status as a civilization. Not like the absence of the Jedi was any way to help their people rise to that. The Jedi Council decided that they would send the young Jedi Master with the recognizable nickname of the Negotiator to this planet, with his young apprentice, to bring peace talks to the two tribes and help them settle their differences, and bring peace to the world for the first time in thousands of years. Obi-Wan and Anakin would go to the planet of Tython. Obi-Wan at this point was sported with a Jedi mullet, and a stunning beard that made the likes of Opal Rancis jealous. Obi-Wan and Anakin would take a Jedi shuttle to the planet. It would have enough supplies in case negotiations went longer than anticipated. Obi-Wan let Anakin pilot the ship, as he tried his best to loosen the reins on Anakin. It was hard though. Anakin was very reckless, and everyone knew he was. It wasn't a long trip from Coruscant to Tython, as the Jedi shuttle landed on the outskirts of a massive mountain. Anakin walked out first. He was always excited for a new adventure, as he looked up at the massive mountain and the building that was encased into the wall. It was molded with bushes and life growing all over it. Anakin asked what it was, as Obi-Wan stepped down from the ramp and looked up and smiled. He told Anakin that it was one of many Jedi temples that the Jedi used to have across the galaxy. Anakin asked why the Jedi didn't use it anymore. Obi-Wan explained that a long time ago, the Sith ravaged the planet, and the Jedi didn't come back. They simply buried their dead, and they let the world heal around the temple. The Jedi of the past saw it as a way to let the nature heal around the ruins of what was built there. Anakin nodded his head as if he comprehended anything that Obi-Wan had just said to him, as he darted back inside of the ship to grab some supplies for camp. Obi-Wan used his binoculars to look around. The land was very open. Many of the trees that had been there during the time of the Old Republic had died. While there were new trees growing in, most of the lumber was cut down to be used by these tribes for fortresses and weapons and whatever else they decided to use it for. Anakin detached a speeder from the bottom of the ship and brought it out. It was a two-seated speeder. It could fit both Obi-Wan and Anakin, so it was brought along. Obi-Wan didn't know where the tribe would be, and he didn't see them through the binoculars, so he told Anakin to warm the engine. They would be going for a drive. Anakin asked if he could drive the speeder. Obi-Wan smiled and chuckled as he gave Anakin his permission, as long as he didn't land them in the nest of Gundarks this time. Anakin smiled and laughed as he told Obi-Wan that it was his fault for falling into that nest of Gundarks. Obi-Wan grinned as he chuckled back, and then, with a tad bit of serious sarcasm, he warned of rancors being on this planet, and how he really didn't feel like playing with one of those carnivorous beasts. The two hopped onto the speeder as Obi-Wan told Anakin to head north, saw smoke billowing from above rock formations on a little cliff ahead, about 20 clicks north. Their speeders glided through the rough terrain as Obi-Wan and Anakin made their way up to the cliff as they got closer and closer. The smell of char and ash led them to a small camp of natives on the planet. They instantaneously prepared to fight, only to notice that these were robe-wearing individuals. The tribes had ancient drawings left behind from the remnant of the Jedi who used to live here. The tribes both saw the Jedi almost like gods. In a way, the Jedi were, but it didn't matter as Obi-Wan and Anakin got off their speeder. Anakin pulled out of his pocket a small translator droid. It was tiny and fluent in only Deep Core dialect. It could translate dialect from anywhere in the Deep Core. A little bit of Mid-Rim was also there, but it mostly struggled with anything close to the Outer Rim. Though that didn't really matter as Kenobi stepped forward and with his young apprentice, who shadowed him. It was close to dusk as the wind blew through the land, touching grass, hair, robes, and everything alike. The Jedi looked around, and the chieftain came out of the main hut as he bowed to the Jedi. Obi-Wan and Anakin reciprocated the movement as they did the same back to the chieftain. Anakin looked around. He felt a pull. His concentration was jarred when Obi-Wan began speaking to the tribal leader, telling him that the two of them were Jedi, and that they'd come to negotiate peace talks between the two tribes. The chieftain scowled as he looked back at Obi-Wan, speaking back to him, saying that the other tribe was full of traitors and he didn't want to negotiate with them. He told Kenobi that they had captured his sister in a raid. The tribe he ran was peaceful and they stopped warmongering, and they were being picked on for it, because the other tribe was more warrior-esque. Obi-Wan had dealt with this before. When he was on Mandalore for an extended mission with Qui-Gon, he defended the Peacekeepers while dealing with warmongers. This would be a lesson for Anakin to learn, rather than a lesson in negotiation for the negotiator himself. Anakin was trying to pay attention to the chief and Obi-Wan as they talked, but there was something still pulling at him. He wasn't really entirely sure what it was, some sort of ringing in his ears. He kept looking around trying to find it, trying to be as obvious as he couldn't be about not being distracted. Obi-Wan noticed, but he didn't have time to call Anakin out on his lack of attentiveness. He was more concerned with the fact that these tribes might not be willing to settle for peace. Obi-Wan sighed and then bowed as he thanked the chieftain and the tribe for speaking to him. He turned around to Anakin and told him to set up camp here. He would be back late the following day. Kenobi was going to the other camp to find out more about the chieftain and discuss with them a plan for solving the issues on this planet. Obi-Wan told Anakin to stay here and not leave the tribe alone, telling him to have the Force be with them. Anakin smiled and said the same back to his master as Obi-Wan raised his cloak and hopped onto the speeder and turned it back on, speeding into the sunset-covered world. Anakin began setting up a small camp, trying to do anything he could before night became too dark for him to see anything. And then he felt that pull again. He remembered what Obi-Wan said, but there was something trying to get his attention. Anakin looked over at the mountain across from the cliff, and under the shadow of the sun he decided he would go and investigate, despite what Obi-Wan had told him to do regarding staying put. Anakin walked down through the barren land and found his way eventually at the foot of the massive mountain. The mountain towered over the landscape, and it was on top there was a Jedi relic, a temple. Anakin began to scale the mountain. He had a small cable that was on his belt, activated by a button. This grapple helped him up the mountain as Anakin used the Force to propel each of his steps to the top. Anakin climbed up over the edge as he stood on a small landing bay platform. It was a bay for on-world transports, nothing that docked here went any further than the sky. It didn't go into space or anything. Anakin looked around as he kicked some of the moss on his boots. Anakin looked down and saw that the halls and entrances were dark, so he ignited his lightsaber and walked into the darkness. The halls lit up with the blue eminence as he searched around looking for what was calling to him. The force dinged with a high, ear-piercing ringing. Anakin noticed it got louder and louder as he got closer into the temple. By the time he touched the temple grounds, he noticed how loud it was really getting. Anakin walked into the temple and saw 2 sets of stairs that climbed into the sky. Anakin couldn't see anything more than what his lightsaber could show him. The halls creaked and croaked. The death was in the air. Anakin tripped as he looked down and picked up a lightsaber of some sort. He hit the igniter on it, and then realized that the blade was unstable, as he threw it away from him. Anakin then ducked behind cover, and looked around the corner to see a massive passageway explode into openness that led into a dark tunnel. Anakin thought it was odd to have a hidden passageway inside of the wall. Anakin stepped over vines and past little holes with fallen water dripping down them. The air was stale as Anakin looked down the corridor. He heard a small creak as he looked over, and flying creatures bailed out of the temple as Anakin pressed forward. He looked back and forth, then entered the hole in the wall. Anakin found some stairs as he led him down with his lightsaber ahead of him as he followed each step down into the dark cavern below. There were bodies littered everywhere. This seemed to be some sort of tomb. The Jedi couldn't bury everyone, so they tossed the bodies down into the burial grounds. Anakin stepped around the bodies as he continued following the noise he kept hearing ring out through his ears. He found himself in front of a grave with a 5-letter name in front of him that sat in the ancient dialect of the Jedi. Anakin couldn't read it, but he dusted off the name, and a hatch opened. A small door came out of the side of the tomb, and Anakin looked down at it. Inside of it was a small compartment. As Anakin knelt down and reached down for the helmet, as Anakin touched it, it was transported into the Force. He saw massive armies, starships generations lost in the past. Anakin looked around as he saw a man and a woman marrying one another, both of them with a lightsaber attached to their belts, as they held each other emphatically. Anakin was then whipped away as he watched the descent of the masked man. Purple turned to red as he and his accomplice turned to evil and lost their ways from the Jedi Code. Anakin looked on as he watched them fall deeper and deeper. Anakin could feel it, and then betrayal. At the end, there was the regaining of peace, and that of the light side. Anakin could feel the light pulsating from the man as he laid himself down for rest and died. Once he returned as an apparition, and then Anakin tumbled back as he held out the helmet in front of him. Anakin twisted it around, and then a voice called out. The voice said the 2 words, "Chosen One." Anakin whipped his lightsaber around, demanding whoever it was to show themselves. The voice spoke again, asking Anakin to calm himself. Anakin demanded yet again to know who was speaking to him. The voice said he was once a powerful Jedi, one who could help him with his struggles, only if Anakin allowed him to do so. Anakin paused. His ego was a bit beaten. Anakin said he was fine. He didn't need help from anyone. Anakin reached over and grabbed a hold of a lightsaber. He ignited the blade, and amethyst exploded from the hilt. Anakin's jaw dropped. He'd only seen one other Jedi with a purple blade. Then a voice spoke again, telling Anakin that if he let go of his ego, he'd be able to exceed in whatever it was that he dreamed of achieving. Revan told Anakin that there was more to the Jedi way, and if he trusted him, he could achieve what it was that he always dreamed of. Anakin paused for a moment, and then thought. He asked the ghost of Revan how he could be taught by him. Revan told Anakin that there was a dark eminence growing in the galaxy, and the Jedi were too corrupt to see it. Revan had seen how the Jedi could fall, and while he had his reasons to root for them and root against them, he was mostly concerned with the Chosen One. Anakin sat back and asked about the Sith, and Revan told Anakin that the time would come later. For now, Anakin needed to take the helmet and the blade back to his camp and prepare for his next steps. Anakin called out Revan's name, and silence filled the air, as the sounds of creaking and croaking returned to the building, as Revan's voice seemed to disappear. Anakin stood up from the ground and placed his blade on his belt, as he looked up at the helmet while carrying himself outside of the temple. When he got to the landing platform, he looked down and sighed. He had to climb all the way back down the mountain and make it back to camp by daytime. Anakin walked forward, and as he tried to get down and climb down the platform, it unlatched from the temple and crashed down, as it began sliding down from the mountain. Anakin held on to the relics as he looked for something to grab a hold of so he didn't fall off. He couldn't find anything as the entire platform crashed into the ground, and Anakin tumbled off, landing and breaking his leg as he yelled out in pain. Anakin looked up and saw smoke still coming from the village. He knew he still had to get back before morning, but his leg was broken, and he didn't know what to do. Obi-Wan would be very upset with him if he was caught outside of where he was told to stay. Anakin looked down. He saw the mask still intact, and he saw the lightsaber still attached to his belt. Anakin laid his head back as he looked into the sky. He sighed heavily, as a pain sat in his chest, as he saw white robes flutter around him. It was an apparition. There was no blue outline. He wasn't a Force ghost. Revan stepped around and told Anakin to get up. Anakin said he couldn't, his leg was broken. Revan sighed. He told Anakin that he was the Chosen One. There was so much raw potential within him, but he needed to access it himself. Revan told Skywalker that at one point, he was the most powerful being alive himself, but he had to learn everything about the Force to realize his own power. Anakin needed to stand on his own. Revan demanded that Anakin rise. Anakin sighed as he got up. He then moved to stand as he stood on his non-broken leg. Revan turned around and smiled at Anakin, his face lit with gold as it surrounded him, and then he told Anakin to place his other foot down. Anakin spoke up, telling Revan that his leg was broken. Revan crossed his arms and then looked at Anakin blankly. Anakin placed his foot down gently. Revan asked Anakin to apply pressure. Anakin hesitated as Revan told Anakin to focus on the Force, concentrate on the Force, and let it flow through his body. Anakin put his foot down with more pressure as the Force surrounded Anakin's leg and it healed the wound from inside of him. Anakin jolted back as he looked at Revan, who just grinned at him. Revan told Anakin that these would be his first steps as he bowed, and the golden apparition disappeared in the thin air. Anakin was shocked. He realized for the first time in all of his life that the power of being the Chosen One allowed him to be so much more powerful than he could have ever dreamed of. The question was if Anakin would be humbled by such power, or if he'd be consumed by it. Anakin smiled evilly as he turned around and picked up the helmet and the lightsaber of Revan as he made his way back to the tribe's camp. Anakin set the helmet and the lightsaber inside of a small tent, and he went inside and got some rest for the night as it turned to morning. Anakin was awoken by hunters celebrating the kill of a beast. They were going to use this beast as a celebration for a feast. Anakin was rather grumpy, but he stayed quiet. He spent time with the tribe, interacting with them during their daily life, but something within him made him want to go back to the ship and talk to Revan. Anakin decided he would wait. After several hours, Kenobi would eventually return and find Anakin and talk to him about the situation. The other tribe was willing to negotiate peace talks, but they were a good while away. And they wanted to negotiate a marriage between the chieftain's sister of the peaceful tribe and the chieftain of the warrior tribe. This wouldn't be well received by the peaceful tribe, so Kenobi needed to help them find a way to get the sister out of the situation. The Jedi wouldn't promote arranged marriages, and they were here to help the peace, not ruin the life of the sister. Obi-Wan told Anakin that they would have to bring the tribes together and make them talk with one another. He then told Anakin that this process could take days or months to complete, depending on how stubborn the warrior-like tribe would be, or how prescient the peace tribe would be on another issue. Anakin sighed, and then he remembered the mask and realized he could learn more if they were stuck here for a long while. Anakin and Obi-Wan would then begin an arduous task of explaining the terms the warrior tribe to the peaceful one. Obi-Wan and Anakin would continuously spend the duration of the next 3 weeks helping negotiations. Anakin would become addicted to the knowledge that Revan had bestowed to him. Anakin was very obviously trying to learn power and focus on the situation. Anakin was very obviously trying to learn power, and his focus on the situation at hand was fading for his lust for power. Revan hadn't noticed until Anakin reacted out of anger. Anakin was walking away from Obi-Wan after a heated exchange as he cut down dozens of trees and killed several members of the wildlife in the area. Anakin was a bit unhinged, and with power growing because of Revan's teachings, he realized that he could avoid listening to Obi-Wan. The next time Revan interacted with Anakin, he scolded the Jedi Padawan. Anakin was very visually upset by this, as Revan explained the truth of true balance to Anakin. Revan acknowledged that Anakin had an affinity towards the darkness, but he also told Anakin that he needed to balance himself more than he already was. There was so much darkness in him, and his eagerness to grab power made him vile. Anakin didn't understand why Revan was upset with him, and then Revan placed his lightsaber in Anakin's hand. He told Anakin to ignite the blade. As Anakin did, he saw into the past, the same way he did when he first discovered the mask. Inside of the blade, he saw the past. There was pain, there was suffering, death. Everything Anakin feared sat inside of the past, and watched as Revan slaughtered people, and then watched as his friend betrayed him after losing his wife. Anakin felt his skin crawl as Revan told Anakin what the path he was going down would lead to. Revan told Anakin that the dark side, while powerful, was not going to bring him completeness. He would still suffer unimaginably if he carried down this path. Anakin sighed. He just wanted to be powerful. But he would have to learn to be patient if he was going to be truly powerful. Revan told Anakin that his master would be the right guide for him, but he needed to stop being so arrogant. The way of the Jedi was effective, but the path that Revan took led him to achieve unimaginable powers. Anakin leaned in as Revan continued speaking. Revan balanced himself with light and dark, using the full reign of the Force. He asked Anakin if he knew about the Barrandose sages or the Dathomirian witches. Anakin nodded his head quietly, as Revan told Anakin that they used both sides of the Force, and it allowed them to be so proficient as Force users. If Anakin could learn how to use this power, he could rise above the power of the Sith and the Jedi. But Anakin needed to remember that the Jedi were not his enemies, and that Obi-Wan was not his competition. Anakin nodded as Revan told Anakin to use both blades. If he used both, he would have to remember what Revan taught him. There was no mistake about that. Anakin thanked Revan as he put the lightsaber on his belt and walked back over to the tribe and found Obi-Wan and apologized to his master. Obi-Wan smiled and placed his hands on Anakin's shoulders and told him that he was very proud of him. Obi-Wan told Anakin he understood how hard it was, trying to reach a new level and having to wait to get there. It wasn't always easy being a Padawan learner. Anakin smiled. He appreciated Obi-Wan, but he didn't appreciate him enough. Obi-Wan was so patient, kind, and responsive towards Anakin. The two would turn around and go back to the tribes, who were debating with one another. Obi-Wan settled the debates as Anakin listened to every word that Obi-Wan said, listening to his master eloquently speak to the tribes, finding their middle ground as they too became friends, ending centuries of war. Anakin told Obi-Wan that he would like to learn more from him about patience and understanding the art of diplomacy. Obi-Wan looked at Anakin as his face lit up with joy. He felt that he was finally making an impact on Anakin. Obi-Wan wrapped his arm around Anakin's shoulder for a side hug as the two walked back to their speeder so they could get back to the ship and depart. They hopped onto the speeder and whisked back to the ship as they unloaded all their supplies and had a good talk. Obi-Wan then noticed the glimmer from under Anakin's robe. It wasn't his own lightsaber. Obi-Wan asked what was beneath Anakin's robe as he stopped him, and then Obi-Wan pulled the blade out of Anakin's belt. Obi-Wan lifted it into his hands as he was sent back, seeing the exact same vision of Anakin when he first held the blade, the visions of pain, suffering, war, and the destruction of everything, the entirety of Revan's life, as Obi-Wan dropped the hilt on the ground, asking Anakin what he found. Anakin said the name Revan, and it clicked for Obi-Wan. He had heard of the name during his studies. He then asked if Anakin would be learning from Revan. Obi-Wan knew that thousands of years before, Revan returned from the dead as an apparition and approached those who knew of him before going dormant for millennia. Anakin nodded his head as he reached out. Obi-Wan placed the blade back onto his apprentice's hand. He knew who Revan was, but not of what Revan was truly capable of. It wasn't arrogance, but the Jedi Code was not really too fond of teaching what Revan's ways were. Within the last thousands of years, the Jedi became more strict on their code. Obi-Wan asked Anakin about what he was going to do with the blade of Revan. Anakin explained everything in full detail as he grabbed the mask. He told Obi-Wan that Revan wanted to help him find true balance in the Force. Obi-Wan listened to every word that Anakin said. He always did. Obi-Wan wasn't blind. He noticed the change in Anakin's demeanor in the recent months since they were on Tython. Anakin was growing in his power, but he was also growing in confidence. At a certain point, it was obvious that Anakin had abandoned his lust for power. He became more balanced, and Obi-Wan wanted Anakin to explain his relationship with this balance. When the two loaded everything up into the ship, Anakin carried on explaining everything he had learned. To Obi-Wan, it hurt a little, knowing that the apparition was able to teach his student better than he could teach Anakin, but at the same time, it humbled Obi-Wan to expand his reaches of knowledge. Anakin asked if he could pilot, and Obi-Wan told Anakin that he would be taking over the ship. They were going somewhere remote. Instead of rejecting this, he saw how excited Anakin was. Adventure. Of course Anakin would be excited. Skywalker was losing his breath while talking about everything he had learned. He was so excited and eager to learn the ways of the Force in such a balanced demeanor. Obi-Wan knew Qui-Gon would have been better for Anakin because of his disassociation from the Jedi Code. Obi-Wan also knew how much Anakin would have thrived with Dooku as well. But regardless, Obi-Wan saw this as a learning opportunity for both master and apprentice. Obi-Wan knew that the best teacher could learn from an apprentice, and he hadn't been open to learning from Anakin. Revan helped him humble himself and acknowledged that there was more knowledge than what he was able to bestow to his apprentice. Anakin and Obi-Wan would jump into hyperspace, with unknown coordinates to Anakin. Obi-Wan turned over and looked at his student, as he asked if there had been anything else that Revan had taught him. Anakin shook his head, and then Obi-Wan saw something out of the corner of his eye. The mask. From the mask, an apparition rose. It was the apparition of flowing white robes, one of the Order's most unique members. Obi-Wan couldn't believe it as he rubbed his beard. He looked at Revan, and Revan spoke up, revealing himself to both Jedi. He said that there was little chance for the Jedi to recover, but if this master and apprentice could learn the ways of balance, then maybe they could help the Jedi find peace within themselves, and order within the Jedi. It was a long shot, but Revan still believed there was good inside the Jedi. He knew that there was every chance for redemption, but it had to be done by this master and apprentice duo. Everyone knew Obi-Wan and Anakin. It was a duo of teacher and student that everyone paid attention to, because they wanted to see if an average Jedi Knight, now Master, could train the Jedi's chosen one. After hours of talking in hyperspace, as the apparition of Revan vanished into thin air, the two Jedi arrived outside of a blue planet with spots of green written across it. Obi-Wan piloted the ship down as Anakin asked where they were. He smiled and looked over, remembering the little bit of information he had about Revan. Obi-Wan told Anakin that Revan found himself at peace on the planet of Ahch-To, and here they would teach and learn with one another how to achieve such balance. Obi-Wan, of course, being a Jedi true to the code, saw the change in Anakin, and he didn't want to be arrogant of what the potential change could do for Anakin. When they landed on the surface of the planet, they carried the little supplies they had to the top, and found a surface of open land, where they would begin to place the helmet of Revan and the lightsaber of Revan. Obi-Wan told Anakin that the two of them would meditate with one another. They would have to if they wanted to increase their bond, so they could achieve better strength between master and student. Obi-Wan first apologized, though, for how rough he was on Anakin. He wanted to show his apprentice that he knew he wasn't perfect. Anakin reciprocated this apology and also apologized to his master for being arrogant and impatient. Obi-Wan smiled as the two faced each other and got down on their knees and focused. Obi-Wan stretched out with a force, and he felt the light surging from above, and the darkness bellowing from below, down below under the surface of the island. The planet was powerful, in the light side and in the dark. Anakin felt it too. Obi-Wan felt what was in Anakin and what he was drawn to, and as he suspected, Anakin was drawn to the darkness. It was within him to be drawn to it. It held more power. Obi-Wan bit his lip and let Anakin experience the dark, cold power of the Force before speaking up. The two meditated as they let themselves become one with the island and the Force energies within it, and a part of it. Anakin opened his eyes and saw his master smiling. Anakin was curious, and so he went into his master's mind to see what it was that Obi-Wan was concentrating on. When he went in, he was surprised to see a feminine shadow behind him. She was with him all the time. Anakin didn't know who she was, but she was quite elegant. Anakin then got a vision of what he saw, and it was a construction of an evil plot brewing in the galaxy. A world of water, a massive planet and temple, a bearded man with white hair, and a cloaked figure in an eerie industrial skyscraper. There was so much pain and death. Anakin then watched as there were bodies everywhere. The death of thousands, just like the bodies on Tython. There was no escape from this pain he encountered here. Inside of the vision, he was lost. Anakin rolled back over and jolted his eyes open. Obi-Wan heard Anakin fall back as he opened his eyes and got up to see Anakin breathing heavily on the ground. Obi-Wan got up and gently calmed Anakin down by sitting next to his apprentice. He asked what was wrong as tears flowed from his eyes. He couldn't believe it. The bodies inside of the temple, they were everywhere. Sure, Anakin had a miserable 6 years as a Jedi, but it was too much pain to bear watching all of those people dead on the ground. They didn't deserve it. Obi-Wan told Anakin that it would be okay. Revan would reappear as he spoke up, telling Anakin that he foresaw the future, a future without balance but darkness, explaining that the dark side was powerful. It gave so much immaculate power, but it took that power by killing and preying on others. The younglings, Padawans, knights, masters, they were all victims of a plot that was building in this time right now. Revan spoke, saying again that the Sith of his own time were many, but the Sith of this time were few. They were calculated, and they were ready to seize revenge for the first time in millennia. Revan knew of the rule of two, and he knew that it would backfire on the Sith eventually, but Anakin needed to be the one to do it. Revan told the two of them that there was a cave below the island. They were not to enter it until they were ready. One needed absolute balance to enter that cave, and while Revan was setting this up to see if Anakin would disobey him, he said it to let the two Jedi know that there were answers somewhere on the planet to the future. Revan told the two that they would have to find harmony in the Force. It would take months to do, especially for Obi-Wan. Anakin wasn't tied to the code like Obi-Wan was. Kenobi nodded his head as he realized what he would have to do, and he would have to go back into his past, into a time where he questioned the code the most. Revan had a vision. He foresaw Anakin and Obi-Wan being like what he and his old friend Alec were before Alec became Malak. The two were a powerful duo. The only fear is that Kenobi and Skywalker would turn to the dark side and bring the galaxy to its knees. Though there was something odd about Kenobi for Revan. He didn't know what it was, but there was something regarding a woman. Revan had learned about Padme from Anakin early on in Anakin's training, and it had been talked about. Revan encouraged Anakin to seek out a healthy relationship, because after all, Bastila brought him back from the darkness thousands of years before. But for Kenobi and this woman, he didn't really know. Regardless, Revan told the two that they needed to do everything together. They needed to spar together, they needed to use the Force together, meditate, and everything else that they could do together. If they realized their true potential, they could access a power that they didn't know they had. Revan foresaw it, which is why he didn't break Anakin off away from Obi-Wan. If the two could harmonize together in true balance, then the two of them could very truly become a dyad in the Force, though Revan wanted to see if they could figure it out themselves. Revan had an ancient knowledge of the Force, and all of this knowledge had been long forgotten, especially because of the Jedi after the fall of Tython. Regardless, the next 4 months of training would be extravagant. It had been 2 weeks since they last saw Revan. He left the two of them to themselves. Obi-Wan and Anakin grew exponentially together. They relied off of one another, and because of their reliance on one another, they were allowed to access new powers from within the Force. The two were unstoppable together. While Anakin was the chosen one, their power grew together. Anakin also learned patience as he decided to trust his master's teachings. As the past few months progressed, Anakin became less and less reliant on Revan, and more reliant on Kenobi. Obi-Wan opened up to Anakin, and Anakin opened up to Obi-Wan. They both talked about their feelings with one another, Obi-Wan's love for Satine and Anakin's admiration for Padme. The two of them respected each other, and they also grew as one. They became a dyad in the Force. Their power radiated off of one another, and Anakin came into his own as a 16-year-old Chosen One, and Obi-Wan came into his own as a teacher of the Chosen One. He was able to guide a student to a new level. While the Jedi Council had no clue where Kenobi took his student, it was apparent that the two of them were out in the galaxy growing. The Force was all set. Light and dark dissipated as the two of them realized that they could restore true balance in the universe. While neither the Jedi or Sith could match the power of these two, Anakin and Obi-Wan became humbled as they respected each other and used each other to propel themselves forward. Balance on Ahch-To was guided by the Force, as they saw the ways of the ancient Jedi as rudimentary. Obi-Wan saw the code as something that was restrictive, and really became aware of what could have happened had the two of them stuck to the code rather than the Force. Realizing that the Force was meant to be a part of their natural abilities, Anakin and Obi-Wan learned to respect their places in the other individual's life. Anakin truly saw Obi-Wan as a master and respected him like a father, while Obi-Wan saw Anakin like a student and respected him like a son. The two of them were able to identify their bond with one another, and they were both able to identify their bond with the Force itself. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, learned the ways of Form 6 and taught Anakin how to use it as well. The two of them cemented themselves as users of the Force, not Jedi, not Sith, but balanced in the Force. Their balance helped them capitalize off of rare Force abilities. Many of these abilities were taught to Anakin by Revan and Obi-Wan, but Anakin could only use them. Obi-Wan was greatly powerful, and his power only increased because of this dyad created between him and his apprentice, but both Obi-Wan and Anakin accepted and respected that Anakin was certainly always meant to be more powerful. While in duels, Obi-Wan was always able to hold his own, and even beat Anakin 50% of the time. The Force, though, is where Anakin was extremely powerful, intangible to Obi-Wan. Anakin could create storms, tame seas, crush mountains. He was truly powerful, and he was an unstoppable force. Revan knew what Anakin could become if he fell into darkness, and he did everything to avoid Anakin becoming a vessel of evil, not knowing the result of Anakin falling to the dark side. But there was still the possibility of the galaxy being consumed by evil. Obi-Wan and Anakin could feel it more than ever than before. And if anything Anakin's visions taught him was true, it was almost time for Anakin and Obi-Wan to go out and search for these hints that he was told about and shown. But there was also one more lesson. Revan appeared and told both Kenobi and Skywalker that they needed to face the darkness alone. It was evident that together they could take on the galaxy, but they needed to trust in themselves, so that when they were away from one another, that they could always rely on the Force. Revan mentioned Melek again, and how he was betrayed by his best friend. And while Revan and Melek were never a dyad, their potential was unstoppable. And it was allowed to diffuse when Revan turned away from the darkness, and Melek became a part of the never-ending evil. Revan asked Anakin to go down into the caves below the planet and seek the darkness for himself, and find what he could find inside of said darkness. See if it could tempt him, lead him away from the light and the balance. He was curious if Anakin could be dissuaded from being a part of the light. Obi-Wan would wait on the top of the mountain, and wait until Anakin returned. Anakin went down below as Obi-Wan went to the top rock and meditated on the Force. As Anakin entered the cave below, he felt coldness inside of the dark side. He could see the temples of the Sith, and the rule of two taking over the galaxy, one day at a time. Anakin could feel the surge of evil growing in the war on the near horizon. There was something brewing in the galaxy. Anakin saw massive armies, just like the armies he saw when he first held Revan's blade and helmet. He didn't know what this meant, but it seemed as if impending doom was on the horizon if he and Obi-Wan didn't stop whatever evil this was. And then Anakin realized that there was a mountain over a lava bank. He saw Obi-Wan on top of it, tempting him to try and face the high ground. The dark eminence of the galaxy cackled behind Obi-Wan, misleading him as the head of a silver-haired man rolled down the lava bank. Anakin was confused and even scared. He didn't know what to do and make anything of this moment, but it was terrifying to see what evils could be ignited if he fell into darkness. Anakin then realized the potential of such powers, but he remembered that the darkness only brought him pain and suffering. Anakin eventually left the cave with a heavy heart as he collapsed in the grass, overlooking the ocean, feeling the ground below him and the wind around him. Obi-Wan went down below, and he saw the death of so many he cared about. He saw Satine, younglings, and hundreds more. He was meant to suffer, and his goal was to help bring balance to the Force. Obi-Wan was strong, though he was not deterred from the light, and while he would have said he lived by the code, he now lived by balance. After seeing the destruction of so many, Obi-Wan left the cave and found Anakin. He told his young apprentice that they could not return to the Jedi Order. Anakin was puzzled, as Revan watched without making himself present or known to the Jedi. Obi-Wan told his apprentice that the two of them needed to go out and find this source of evil. Anakin may have only been 16, but the two of them could stop the Sith together. They had grown so much, and as a dyad in the Force, there was nothing the galaxy could throw at them that they couldn't stand up against. They knew that if they trusted in each other, then their power would be immeasurable, but that was the key. Everything they learned on Ahch-To needed to be complete balance and complete trust in one another. The master and apprentice duo had come a long way since Tython, and it was time that they proved what more they could do. As Anakin donned his robes, he also carried with him Revan's helmet. The two of them would go to their shuttle as they searched for the water world. First, they would go to Mon Cala, and then even to Naboo, searching for these facilities that Anakin envisioned. There were so many planets in the galaxy far and wide, but on Mon Cala, a young man told them of a planet called Kamino. They could find what they were looking for there. All the water planets were really well connected with one another. They often sent supplies back and forth because their civilizations were entirely based around living off the water. Anakin and Obi-Wan would find Kamino 2 weeks after leaving Ahch-To. When they landed, they immediately felt discomfort. There was something evil on the planet, but they did not know what. When they arrived, they were greeted by a creature with an extremely tall neck. The creature was one of these Kaminoans, and she seemed extremely happy to see that the Jedi were here. The Jedi were confused as to why they were welcomed so warmly when they weren't requested to be here. The Kaminoan expressed that the Jedi ordered a grand army. Though there was a problem, someone was on the planet at the wrong time. He was talking to the Prime Minister when the greeter accidentally brought the two Jedi into the Prime Minister's room. The man was known as Lord Tyrannus, but when he removed his hood to see the two Jedi, it was obvious to Obi-Wan who it was. Tyrannus was Dooku, as he turned around and addressed Obi-Wan as Master Kenobi. The two Jedi steadied themselves as Dooku made a proposition, but Anakin spoke up, interrupting the Count of Sereno, as he told Dooku that they were here to stop whatever operation was brewing here, or else. The Dooku laughed off this threat as he stood up and ignited his crimson blade. Anakin and Obi-Wan saw this as a threat and immediately ignited theirs. Anakin holding a blue and amethyst blade, Obi-Wan prepared himself as the three prepared to interlock in a duel. Obi-Wan didn't say anything to Anakin. They were both on the same wavelength. as they steadied themselves into the Form 6 stances. Dooku was surprised. Obi-Wan was taught Form 4 by Qui-Gon, and didn't expect Obi-Wan nor his apprentice to take up the masterful form of Form 6. The three moved around as they each tested one another with light blows from their lightsabers, as they moved around delicately. Anakin moved into an attack position as he pressed forward. Obi-Wan at the same time did to Dooku. Dooku bounced back as he deflected the first strike and then ducked under the second. Dooku was used to being on offense, but as soon as he was put on the defense, he didn't know how to respond. He was stuck, and he had no way of escaping the situation, if he didn't escape. But he was an older man, not quite as loose as he would have been as a younger man. Dooku slipped under a blade from Obi-Wan as Anakin threw his blade forward, and it caught Dooku by surprise, cutting through the Count's stomach as he fell back. Anakin caught him as he lowered him to the floor. Anakin sheathed his blades as Obi-Wan ran over to help him too. Skywalker asked Dooku what he was doing here. Dooku laid back as he coughed heavily. He looked into the bright overhead lights and then back down to Obi-Wan and then to Anakin's eyes as he concentrated on the breathing. Anakin again asked what Dooku was doing here, as Obi-Wan said that they could save him if he told them. Dooku pondered for a moment as his mind ran back and forth, his thoughts becoming fragile as he thought of what could happen if he told the two what he was planning. Dooku let the words slip out of his mouth. It was a clone army, requested by the Sith Lord, in order to send the galaxy into war, and then force the execution of the Jedi. It was complex, but that was the simplicity of it. Dooku sighed as Anakin and Obi-Wan placed their hands over the wound and used the first lesson Revan taught Anakin as they healed the aging Count. His breathing steadied as he looked down to see that the lightsaber wound was gone. He was okay. There was nothing wrong with him anymore, just an old scar. Anakin told Dooku that he would order the end of the clone army, and then tell them where the Sith was. Dooku didn't want to just betray his master, but Anakin made Dooku aware that if he didn't, there would be consequences to pay for, not stopping the galaxy from falling into the pits of chaos and war. The Republic was clearly corrupt, and the galaxy was already churning. Dooku growled as Obi-Wan stood up, telling Anakin he had an idea. Anakin looked at his master as the two of them ran down the corridors to the landing platform adjacent to where Anakin and Obi-Wan landed. The platform had a solar sailor on it. If they entered the ship, there was a possibility they could find out where the Sith were, and they could kill it. When they entered, they were greeted by a droid. It was attached to the ship. It was a personal pilot. Anakin started asking the pilot to take them to the Sith. Obi-Wan immediately started looking for ship logs to see where the ship had been. Anakin demanded that the droid take them to the Sith, or something. He used as many terms as he could: Sith Lair, Sith Temple, Sith Master, Sith Lord. The droid paused and then asked if he meant Lord Sidious. Anakin nodded his head, as the droid turned around and tapped onto the control system and took the ship into the air. Dooku ran out and watched his solar sailor flipped away and depart the system. Anakin and Obi-Wan watched as the ship went into hyperspace. They got on the ground of the main cockpit and meditated. Anakin was taught of a form of the Force that Revan's wife used: battle meditation. The two became entranced in the power of the Force as they used the power of battle meditation, as Anakin surrounded the two with the power to overcome any adversity they may face in their endeavors together. Revan then came to them. He had one final request: that they take their lessons and teach them to others. Anakin understood, and so did Obi-Wan. Revan requested that they use his legacy not for power, but to teach others how to use the Force with true balance. To accept the Force as a guide rather than a tool. Anakin and Obi-Wan nodded. Within hours, they landed inside of a complex. It was hollow, stale in the air, and it was drained with evil. Anakin and Obi-Wan looked around as they tried to find the Sith. They saw relics, statues, and even an altar. They waited patiently. The Sith Lord was not here. It was the middle of the day on Coruscant, and while they didn't know it, he was the Chancellor, and he was currently leading the Republic into downfall. Obi-Wan and Anakin looked at each other. They knew what was to come next. They kneeled down next to the altar, and they focused on the Force, draining the altar and every other Sith artifact from its evil power, and using that power for their complete and utter balance. The day turned to night as a coldness entered the room. Sidious stood before the two. He assumed they were Jedi as he looked down at them. He recognized Skywalker, after noticing how his hair had grown out. Sidious was very confused as he stared at the two, both of them opening their eyes to face the Sith Lord. He knew something was wrong here. He knew something was off in the Force. It wasn't light, but it was powerful. Sidious then realized what it was, as Anakin leapt from his knees and ignited both of his blades. Kenobi did the same in a synchronized fashion, the two of them standing adjacent to Sidious as the Sith Lord realized he was facing down the most powerful duo the Force could create. The Sith Lord would not run from a challenge as he ignited both blades and admired the purple blade that Anakin had. Sidious then noticed something. The hilt belonged to Revan. Sidious knew of this hilt because the Sith had been obsessed with finding it since Revan's death, thousands of years before. It's why the Sith attacked Tython, and why they've been searching the galaxy for years to find it. Every Jedi ever killed by a Sith in the last thousands of years, they were all looking for Revan's hilt. They were going to bleed Revan's crystal and summon the ghost of Darth Revan. Sure, it was a long shot, but as Sidious steadied himself into his stance, he realized the Jedi found it first. Still not able to comprehend the power of the ultimate balance. 5 lightsabers illuminated the room as Sidious tried to take on an easier target in Kenobi. He would find it to be a surprise when Kenobi kept up to the speed of Sidious. The Dark Lord realized he was truly in for the fight of his life, as the two Jedi bounced back and forth, twirling their blades around like tornadoes of power, using their strength and their dedication to perfecting the art of lightsaber combat as they pushed Sidious off balance. The Dark Lord tried to rely on the artifacts, but they had no power. They were drained. They couldn't summon the strength for Sidious to use, as he realized he was only able to rely on himself. Sidious moved defensively as Anakin pushed him into the hallway in a heated exchange. 4 lightsabers bouncing between the two of them as they cut through walls of the corridor, as the two of them fought their way out into the hangar bay. Anakin pushed off offensively, and then he felt his advantage as he pulled back, knowing that Sidious was trying to tempt him off balance. Kenobi caught up as he engaged the Dark Lord, moving around as he spun and blocked a strike from Sidious. Kenobi then engaged Sidious with Anakin by his side, as they pushed Sidious back, cutting through one of his blades, and then finally destroying the second. Without hesitation, the two killed Sidious, and the weight from the galaxy collapsed. Anakin and Obi-Wan looked at one another. They smiled. Their Dyad, their power, their battle meditation helped them bring an end to the Sith. Dooku was clearly no longer a Sith, but there was still so much that had to be done. Over the course of the next 5 months, Obi-Wan and Anakin would return to the Jedi Temple, and begin trying to get through to the High Council, telling them everything they learned. Very few members of the Council were receptive of this, but with the Senate being reconfigured with a new Chancellor, whose goal it was to restore the balance of the Republic by drafting up documents to benefit the Republic, Trade Federation, banking clans, and Techno Union, with this leadership of this Chancellor, war would be avoided. But the clones, bred on Kamino, had an issue. They were living beings, and they were trained to fight in a war that was no longer going to happen. The Kaminoans, seeing the loss of profit, would cut their ties to Kamino and return to one of their former bases of operation, located in a gas giant. Instead of consoling the clones by allowing them a chance to serve the Republic, the Kaminoans would sink Tipoca City and the rest of their facilities, drowning and killing every single clone inside of them. The Jedi would feel this great loss of life, and find that the Kaminoans did it. Under the Republic, they couldn't be classified as criminals, because the clones were Kaminoan property, and the Jedi didn't seek revenge. But Obi-Wan and Anakin would avenge their deaths, eye for an eye, if you will, as it disabled the Kaminoan facility, and allowed it to crash into the gas giant, killing every single one of their people, wiping out their civilization. Kenobi and Anakin would leave the Order. After months of trying to convince the Order of their way, only a few Jedi would join them, turning the Lost 20 into the Lost 26. The Jedi Master joining them would be Master Kenobi, obviously, Windu, Aliba, Ahch-To, Plo Koon, and Yaddle, all seeing the allure to this balanced way. Plo Koon was naturally attracted to this offer, being a former member of the Barrando Sages. They would recruit many Jedi, and their order would relocate to several spots across the galaxy. Dooku would even join their ranks. Instead of being based solely on one planet, they expanded. Lothal, Mandalore, Doran, Tatooine, Sereno. Obi-Wan and Anakin would stay close as ever, committing themselves to a dyad, but still expanding elsewhere in the galaxy, trying to help anyone and everyone that they could. The Order of Revan became the name of this group of knights out to restore balance. Dooku would lead from Sereno, where he would recruit Jedi and Force users alike, building a bond with anyone and everyone, teaching them the ways of balance, while Lothal would be where Windu and Beliba would go and train their first class as students in the Order of Revan, many of them being former Jedi, while utilizing the former Jedi Temple remnants on Lothal, while Plo Koon returned to Doran to work with the Barrando Sages from his home world. Ahch-To would depart to Dathomir and become close with Mother Talzin and Oldaka, uniting the Order of Revan, the Barrando Sages, and the Dathomirian witches to one another. Yaddle, on the other hand, would become very close with Skywalker, as she and him would depart to Tatooine and open up an academy to teach young Force sensitives in the way of balance and unity in the Force. Anakin and Yaddle would begin ripping through slavers and freeing those under the control of the Zygerians, the Pikes, and the Hutts. Anakin was able to find and free his mother, and he was able to find love in a young smuggler on Tatooine by the name of Zena Pax. On the other side of the galaxy, Mandalore would find itself with a member of the Order of Revan, with Kenobi finding and marrying Satine. While the Order of Revan was bare roots without a formidable temple to call home for the entire Order, the Order would grow exponentially as many Jedi saw their work and fled the Order to join the members of Revan. The Jedi would dwindle in size as more of their members would join this incredibly effective Order of Revan. The Jedi would be seen as fragile in their ivory tower as the Order of Revan instated balance across the galaxy, destroying monuments and temples of the Jedi and Sith, as the Order of Revan sought to establish the galaxy full of balance in the peace and Force itself. Kenobi would have a daughter, and Anakin would have 2 children, though they wouldn't be born at the same time. His daughter would be born first, and a son born 5 years after. Kenobi and Anakin's children become close friends, just like their parents. And the Knights of the Order of Revan were allowed to find intimacy and love with others within their ranks, and eventually led to Aayla Secura and Kit Fisto leaving the Order and joining the ranks of the Order of Revan to find love with one another. With the Order of Revan bringing security to the galaxy, the Jedi would no longer be seen as the bringers of peace and justice, as they faded out of existence in the light of the Order of Revan. The legacy of Revan would be established in time, as Skywalker and Kenobi showed all of their members how to access balance within the Force. The Order would be built on foundational trust, with one master leading an entire order, and an order of full masters and students working together, building a lifetime bond as they grew in exceptional size, freeing the galaxy from any harm that could be brought to it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to George Stewart, Benjamin Wells, Jay Hoppin, Warpigment, Through White, Icy Raptor, Gort, and Chancellor Solid Sanders for supporting the channel. Let's down the links so we can see what if Vader raised Luke and Leia. This is a video you definitely don't want to miss. If you want to see what if, let me down below. If you have comments about doing crossovers, check out the Twitch community, Discord, and Patreon to be part of the community for more other ways. And if you want to learn how to win a free lightsaber, subscribe to the channel. First of all, go down below. There's a doc link down below. You go to the doc, you click on the doc, and you type your name on the doc. Don't do anything else. We'll be giving away 3 lightsabers when I hit 50,000 subscribers, so smash that subscribe button because we are so close to doing it. Anyways, let's talk about our story here. So, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be straight out, completely honest with you guys. I have been dreading this story. I have been. I really wanted to tell it. I had the thumbnail made, and I really wanted to tell it, but I was really worried about this because I wanted to pay homage to Revan. I really did. And for those of you that know me, I'm not very big into Legends. I'm just not. I never read the books as a kid. I have one of the very big dictionaries. It's like a Darth Vader on the cover Legends book. That's like the furthest I have of Legends anything. And I haven't really ever gotten into Legends. I just didn't. So I was worried because I wanted to pay proper homage to Revan, and I also wanted to tell a story right, because you can't have ex machinas. Ex machinas are not fun, and they just take away from the story. So I wanted to figure out how to naturally bring this into the story. So I built a tomb. You know, I think Revan was buried on Tython anyways. I can't remember at the moment, but I believe he was, and that's why I put him on Tython. But I wanted to build it up so that there was this ghost of Revan that was known to the Jedi and the Sith, because Revan did appear to, I think, he appeared to somebody the year after he died, and the year after he died is also when the Sith attacked. So I wanted to build up like a legacy that the Sith were actually looking for Revan's, you know, mask and hilt and all that stuff, so that they could learn his power and take from that power and become powerful like him. And I thought that would be very interesting. I tried to hopefully that was interesting or compelling to you, because I wanted to make it like a little bit like a national treasure kind of thing, where you're like searching for the artifact, trying to find what kind of power is in it, right? And obviously the Jedi tried to conceal it because they didn't want to have the power, and Jedi being Jedi. And instead of taking away from Obi-Wan and kind of doing something weird where I do time travel, where I bring Revan to the future, or bring Anakin to the past, I didn't want to do any time travel with this. I wanted to avoid World Between Worlds. I wanted to avoid some Back to the Future type of thing. I just wanted this to be Revan taught Anakin. And in the middle of doing that, I kind of came up with, well, what if Obi-Wan got taught too? And then I decided, well, what if I took canon, Disney canon, and Legends, Legend canon, whatever prefer you, and put them together? And that's what I did. I did it. I know. You're probably gonna hate it too. I know. That's fine. That's fine. But the truth is I wanted to take two very different parts of Star Wars and put them together. And I hope I did that in a way that was enjoyable, because I was like, well, what if Revan was on Ahch-To? What if Revan trained on Ahch-To for a certain period of time? So the natural place to go is Ahch-To. I think Ahch-To is a cool planet. It's a place of balance. There's a lot of balance on the planet, and I think it would be a perfect place for Obi-Wan to take Anakin to, because it's an ancient Jedi world. So take them to Ahch-To, and then realize, well, there's more to the Force than what the Jedi have. And because Ahch-To is such a Force-sensitive planet, light and dark, it's a perfect place to learn about that balance. Even though the Jedi Royal is there, it's perfect to learn about balance, right? And having Revan as a guide is something even more so. And I think instead of having Revan take over the story and being this actual very physical teacher, and while he was very present in the story and very prescient in teaching Anakin, I wanted to make sure that he was also just a guide rather than just a teacher, rather than just showing up and being your ex machina. I wanted him to be present. I wanted him to give to Anakin and Obi-Wan this power that they had, because I'm taking a little bit from the Kenobi show, and I know whatever, but Obi-Wan's very powerful, and Anakin is extremely powerful, and I think if we allow them to actually be what they're meant to be in this father and son relationship that Anakin really needed, they create a dyad, right? And that dyad allows them to be overzealously powerful, and I thought that'd be kind of cool, because we never see Anakin and Obi-Wan kill Sidious before, so I was like, that'd be kind of fun. And instead of just wrapping it up with some stupid stuff, I decided, well, what if they went to Kamino? And I figured, well, so let's say Mon Cala trades with Kamino, something simple just to tie it together, and allow them to fight Dooku, who is on Kamino, and then fight Sidious. I thought that'd be much more compelling than some, oh, they go talk to the Jedi go on, fight Sidious, da-da-da-da-da. No. Let's do Obi-Wan and Anakin, the dyad in the Force, go and kill the Sith Lord in the galaxy. And I really tried to shoot for balance in the end, and I really hope you guys liked the end. I thought the end was really fun, with the Jedi all leaving the Order and kind of just being like, yeah, I like this, it's kind of cool. And Yaddle and Anakin getting that moment, and the shameless plug for Xenopax. If you haven't watched the video, it's totally worth a watch. The What If Anakin Was Never Discovered. Shameless plug, I know, but yeah, I thought this was, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really did. I'm feeling pretty good about the story right now. It's a good, feel-good story, feel-good, happy ending. Anyways, though, I love you all. Spread the love. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, do all the things so we can hit 50,000 subscribers and I can give away 3 more lightsabers. I love you all. And always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.